I'm Jacquie Gering, and we're going to talk quilting. You know, as quilters, we have quilting options. We can hand quilt, we can free motion quilt, and we can quilt with our walking foot. Today, it's about the walking foot. Walking foot quilting is known for straight lines. We can do lovely linear designs with our walking foot. And if we look at the unparalleled quilt here on the design wall, those beautifully channel quilted lines create wonderful texture on our quilts. And while I love a line, the walking foot is also really versatile for our quilting. And not only can we do lines, we can do curves. So let's look at a couple of quilts where I've done some walking foot quilted gentle curves. And I want to emphasize to you that curves with the walking foot need to be gentle. So let's look at this first quilt. This is the Night Forest quilt. And if we look at the quilting lines, so notice how the lines are really gently curved. There are no kind of circular curves on this, and they follow the kind of gentleness of the trees in this quilt. And those gentle curved lines can add a lot of movement and interest and texture to your quilts. The next quilt is a really fun quilt. So look at the curves of these buildings. This is the Tipsy City quilt, and gently curved quilting was just perfect to emphasize the gentle curves of the building. Notice that they get a little bit more curvy on this quilt and in the bottom section. Also notice how the lines come together and apart to create kind of this different texture on the bottom of this quilt. And we can use those curved lines to come in and touch each other, to come out and create all sorts of different shapes that will give an interesting texture for your quilt. So let's look next at this design. And this one right here, I call the organic curves design. And again, notice that the curves are gentle and just flowing across this piece. Notice also how they come close together, they come apart, and that creates that really interesting texture. What's really fun about this kind of quilting is I kind of call it let it go curves because they're organic and there are no lines to follow. You can just really kind of let it go when you do this kind of quilting. There are a couple of things to remember though when you're doing organic curves on your quilt. First of all, when we're curving as we quilt, sometimes you know, it's easy to kind of head off on the diagonal, and we want those curves to be reasonably straight up and down as we quilt our quilt. And so when we start this, we're actually going to mark 2 lines that will help us stay reasonably straight. So let's look at a sample, and we'll take this sample sandwich right here. And I'm going to do my quilting on this sandwich. And if I start those gentle curves, especially on a long quilt, like think about if we're at 90 inches and a twin size or a double size quilt, it's really easy to start straight and then kind of veer off to the diagonal, and we really don't want that to happen. So in comes our painter's tape. I use painter's tape because it's less sticky than masking tape, and we really don't want to have tape residue on my quilt. So I'm going to take a piece and I'm going to set my first line like that, and it's pretty straight. And then I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to set that, I'm lining up that line right along the tape like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5, it's about 6.5 inches out. And depending on the size of your quilt, you might want to have these lines just a little bit farther apart. So I'm going to set that second line like this, using the edge of my ruler. There you go. So I have those 2 lines, and what this is going to allow me to do is keep those gently curved lines reasonably straight over my quilt. I'm going to start quilting here, and I'm going to move towards this line, and I can kind of visually see whether those lines are kind of moving. Folks, they don't have to be perfectly vertical because they're curvy, and it's really easy to kind of get back to straight once I reach this piece of tape. So this is my baseline right here, and this is my registration line, which allows me to kind of just see if I'm staying reasonably straight. So let's go over to the machine and let's quilt some gentle curves. Now I want you to look right here. So I'm setting that foot at an angle because I'm starting off on a curve rather than setting it straight like this. So I'm going to set it at an angle. Notice that I hold my sandwich up because if it's down here, it's going to hit against my table and that's going to affect my stitch length. The walking foot will work with your feed dogs. It adds that second set of feed dogs so it moves along the sandwich. But if this sticks up against here, that stitch length is going to vary and we're not going to have those nice, even, beautiful stitches. So I'm going to hold that sandwich up here. I'm going to use my chest as kind of an extra shelf. Let's get my foot on there. Here we go. All right, we're set at an angle and off we go. Oh, goodness. So did you notice what I did? Zoom. So that's never good. Walking foot is a walking foot for a reason, and it's walk, don't run. So let's start again and let's go nice and even. Let's get a rhythm. There we go, that's better. All right, and I'm in control of my curve. Notice that I'm moving my sandwich. I adjust a little bit, I'm moving that sandwich to make my curve, and off I go. And remember I said, there's no rule here, there's no marking that I have to follow, I just go. And notice that I stop every once in a while. Sometimes, especially with a large quilt, you're gonna need to do some adjusting and also relax, breathe. It's really important to breathe. And you know, sometimes when I stop, I can just kind of get myself together and relax. Now I'm going in a nice rhythm. See that? It's not fast. It's not really slow. You know, this foot actually says on it, you can't go full speed with this machine. Did you notice how I just kind of had a little wrinkle there? So I stopped, smoothed it out, and off I go again. And I'm just gonna roll until I get down to the bottom of that quilt. There we go. And I'm stopping off on the batting. And so I start on the batting and I stop on the batting so I don't have to do any securing. I can just cut my thread, raise my presser foot. Let's bring it up here so that you can see this. So, isn't that a beautiful curve? Lovely. Now, sometimes we can cross those curves. Isn't that beautiful? That forms these beautiful ribbons on this, and it's really easy to do. You just let it go. There you go. We can also do these lovely orange peel designs. This is typically a free motion quilted design, but we can do it with our walking foot. Really simple. We have to do a tiny bit of marking. So here's my sample. And I've got it marked already. Notice that I have a grid, and this is perfect with a gridded piece that already has those same size squares. And I've marked at the center of each square 1/2 inch out from the middle of each square. See that? Middle of each square. I'm gonna take it to the machine and I'm gonna sew a gentle S curve using those dots as my marks. Watch, I'm gonna start here and I'm going to wrap around that dot, come back to the intersection, wrap around the dot. See that beautiful S curve? So let's do that. Right to the machine. I'm gonna set right up at that intersection and off we go. Looking at that dot, where you look is where you quilt. Right back into the intersection, right out to the dot, right to the intersection. Notice that I'm going nice and even, really even speed. Really even, and done. Beautiful S-curve. There it is. I'm going to do that S-curve on both sides, just like this, to form those beautiful cables. And then I have to do it in the opposite direction. And I'm going to mark those 1/2 inches, just like that. And I'm going to sew them again. And look what I'm going to get, this beautiful orange peel design that's usually done on free motion quilting, but we can beautifully do it with a walking foot. Gentle curves are so versatile and can do all sorts of beautiful designs. Here's another kind of orange peel variation that's done just by changing the marking. Look at gentle curves. Look at that. That's done on a smaller grid. Look at these beautiful ribboned curves, done with a little bit of marking, but still gentle. Look at this one, little tiny gentle curves. Folks, the walking foot is such a versatile tool for your quilting. Once you've got that gentle curve motion down, the possibilities are endless.